I'm on a mission to see 52 shows in the West End this year, which is approximately one show a week, and I really want to share all about these wonderful shows that I go and check out. So I'm launching this new series where every month I'm going to be doing a recap of all shows that I have seen within that month. So we're starting with January 2025 recap, where I'm going to be talking about all the shows that I've seen in January, the seats that I've had, how much I've paid for the tickets, the theaters, and also what you should be aware of when it comes to these shows. So if you like the sound of it, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below if there's any show that you would like for me to do a full-length review. Make sure to also subscribe because I do short-form content, and a lot of the times I post short review of every single show that I go and see. The first show that I have seen in 2025 is Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 at Donmar Warehouse. This musical enjoyed quite a bit of hype when it premiered in New York, but it took it a long time to come to London. So when it was announced in London, a lot of people just booked tickets straight away because it has already established fan base of people who love this score. And this is a very eclectic story, mix of various genres, and also a very engaging plot twist. The story follows Natasha, who is engaged to Andrei, and she goes to Moscow to wait for him until he comes back from the war. But she meets there Anatole, who is this hot and bad guy, bad influence who manages to seduce her, and basically she breaks off engagement with Andrei, and she doesn't end up with Anatole. And Pierre is another character there whose storyline we follow in parallel, and kind of he manages to save Natasha by giving her hope to continue her life and believe that there is better tomorrow for her. It is a very heartfelt story that has a lot of fun tunes but also some existential questions, and this is not a surprise because this story is based on a 70-page segment from novel War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, so it has a lot of that classic novel influence in terms of the themes that it explores and how it approaches the storyline. I really enjoy this show. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I think probably the reason why I didn't give it 5 stars is because of my seat, which is a little bit controversial. However, I paid my seat 70 quid and I was in the stalls, but I was very back of the stalls, so there were a few elements that were actually restricted when it comes to this view because Donmar Warehouse is a very small theater, and I wasn't really aware of it because I've never been to Donmar Warehouse before. I was kind of like at the very back of the stalls on the side, so there were like elements on the balcony that I needed to lean for and I couldn't really fully see, so I don't really think that I have fully embraced this production to its full glory, but everything that I've seen was so good and so strong and performances were amazing, and I do think that this is one of those shows that is so different to anything else that you can see that it's no wonder that it has such an established audience. It has closed at the beginning of February, so you can't actually see it anymore. However, I wouldn't be surprised if this show makes a comeback of a sort. There is obviously Spotify soundtrack from the original cast, and it's totally worth you checking it out because it is a very, very unique watch and just unique sound of the musical. There are also a few videos that the cast of this show has done, I think prologue and a couple of other songs. So check it out on YouTube because it's gonna give you a little bit of flavor of the show. Swiftly moving on to the show number 2, and that is Swan Lake. And to be quite honest with you, this is also another show that I didn't really book the ticket in advance for. But at the beginning of the January, I was like, what else can I see? And I know that this production is so acclaimed, and it was also sold out. So I managed to find a ticket for £65 at Sadler's Wells a few days before the production, and I was only looking for a single ticket. So I think it's always easier when shows are sold out to find a ticket if you're going on your own rather than together with someone. So I got lucky and I went to see Swan Lake, and this production is such a revolutionary production of this classic. And the reason why this production is so revolutionary is because it opened 30 years ago and it completely reimagined Swan Lake. Basically, the swans, which are normally performed by ballerinas, in this production are performed by all male corps de ballet, if I said it correctly. And this is quite unique take because obviously you're normally used to ballerinas and their tutus and they're all like graceful and performing very gently and delicately. However, this is a male version of it, and also when it was released like 30 years ago, it also had a strong message of normalizing attraction between two males on stage, which is not at all the case for a lot of ballet performances, especially. So this production is not only revolutionary from the way that it approaches this piece. It is also revolutionary in terms of the message that it has sent to the world. It is choreographed by Matthew Bourne, and a lot of the times people, when they refer to this version of Swan Lake, they refer to it as Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, as you can see here, because you need to know that it is this version that you're going to see. And this choreography is so acclaimed that Matthew Bourne's name precedes the title of the show. At some point, if not still, it was the longest consecutive running dance production that you could see. So it is really a masterpiece. And the best thing is that while it's no longer at Sadler's Wells, it is on tour in the UK, so you might be able to check it out throughout 2025, and I 100% recommend it. Obviously, it's using all the original score by Tchaikovsky, and it is one of the most beautiful ballets written. I think the storyline and interpretation of the piece is slightly different to the more traditional Swan Lake. The storyline follows a prince who is a little bit trapped in the castle and surrounded by all the duties and expectations that his queen mother has towards him. So there is a little bit of parallel between the royal family and the inspiration for this. But then there's also that like big story around his desires and these kind of dreams and hallucinations that he's having when he's dancing with these swans. And honestly, the choreography is so modern and amazing, and costumes are so good, and the cast is phenomenal. So it is a 5-star experience that you can expect if you go to see this dance production. When it comes to my seat, I paid it £65, and to be fair, it was a fairly decent seat. I was in the second circle, but because Sadler's Wells is a slightly newer theater, it has a better distribution of the seats. So I think most of the seats in the house have a decent view, even if they're cheaper. So if this production sounds like something you'd be interested in, then make sure to check out on the website if it's coming to the theater near you, because you can definitely still see it in 2025. Another show that I have seen in January is The Importance of Being Earnest at the National Theatre, and this is a 5-star adaptation of this very well-established classic by Oscar Wilde. It is hilarious, and it has assembled impeccable cast, and honestly, I feel that everyone in the theater was just having such a great time, and it just reminded me how much I enjoy Oscar Wilde's writing. In terms of people who are on the bill, they include Doctor Who's Nshuri Gatwa, and then Hugh Skinner, who you might know from Fleabag, as well as Eliza Scanlon, who I know from The Little Women. When it comes to just generally the cast, it is creme de la creme, and the story is very funny. It follows a guy who pretends that his name is Ernest and who lives this double life, and his friend who also at some point start pretending that his name is Ernest, and they go to seduce these women who are very attracted to the fact that their name is Ernest. But then there's also an underlying tone of these two characters hitting on each other as well as their partners hitting on each other. So it's such an engaging show full of very witty one-liners that only Oscar Wilde can write, and can really help you almost capture the essence of being human in such a humorous yet profound way. So this show is definitely the highlight of my January. The best thing about this show is that you can actually see it in cinemas from, I believe, the end of February, so I would 100% recommend you check it out. Also, National Theatre has its subscription service, NT at Home, where I'm sure this will probably at some point be posted. So if you have access to it, then you will be able to see the show. Aside from the storyline and amazing cast, the costumes are amazing. It is a very bright and beautiful show and flamboyant, and like everything about it is so over the top, and it's so British, and it was such a delight to watch it. While the show is no longer at a National Theatre, it's worth noting that it was completely sold out, and the way that I managed to get the ticket was because I accessed Friday Rush tickets, which every Friday, I think at 1 p.m, National Theatre basically allows you to buy tickets that haven't been sold for the following week. And I needed to queue up for about an hour because I think it's 2 shows that they allow you to buy tickets for, and a lot of people queue up. So basically I managed to get the ticket for £48, which I think was pretty good because I had a decent seat. And yeah, that's how I managed to get the ticket for this one. So basically the moral of the story is, for all of these 3 shows that I've just talked about, if the tickets are sold out, don't despair. Especially if you're looking for only 1 ticket, it's a high chance that you might be able to get them on the day. So just make sure that you try every day and like keep an eye on the tickets, because people always return tickets. So I'm so pleased that I managed to get this one. Moving on to the show number 4, and that is Kyoto. This is a super interesting play about Kyoto Protocol, which was formed in 1997, and it basically got all countries around the world to agree on climate targets and tackle climate change in a legally binding way, which was revolutionary at that time. But as you can imagine, a lot of things have happen behind the scenes to make it happen, and a lot of people try to obstruct that from happening because a lot of the political interests and governmental interests that these representatives had at the time. So this show is a Soho Plays, but it is originally the Royal Shakespeare Company production, and it is, I think, classed as almost like a play that is a thriller. It is a bit more of a serious watch, but it's also super engaging, very relevant, very contemporary. And the way that they directed this production is very interesting because it doesn't come across preachy, or they're not trying to make you think certain way or do certain things. It's more like they're really showcasing a snapshot of time, but in a very dynamic and interesting way. We're following the story from a perspective of an oil lobbyist and a lawyer who used to work with the government before, and he's really trying to basically change the course of these negotiations, and he's really heavily involved with it. And we're also following his personal life and how that is impacted. And also there are representatives from countries around the world with a very diverse cast in this production. So it's a really good watch if you enjoy this type of conversation, and I think this is one of those shows that a lot of people who normally wouldn't want to go to theater, I think they might enjoy it because it almost feels like series or like a good movie that you go and check out. So the set was arranged in a way that it resembled a UN conference room, and actually there were some people who were sitting around the table, which was really interesting. And then also everyone who got into the theater got like a delegate lanyard. Mine said Australia on it. Everyone almost felt like they're representing a country, and it just felt a little bit immersive, although it's not necessarily an immersive show. So this show is on until May the 3rd, I believe, so you still have time to see it if you're in London. Also, tickets aren't really expensive, so I think this is one of those shows that is 100% worth checking out because it is not expensive, it's not sold out, and it's super good. And I rated it with 4 stars. We're 6. I revisited in January one of my favorites, and that is Six. Six the musical is so established and well known, and it's been in the West End for about 6 years, so it's a great time to go and check it out again. I am sure that a lot of people are familiar with this show, but for those of you who might not be, it follows the 6 wives of Henry VIII and their story. But there's a plot twist because they're not how you remember them. They are now divas. They're in this band and they're all singing a song to tell their story, and basically they're competing to share who had it worst with Henry. And at the end of it, they basically come together and they're like, why don't we just like form the band and rewrite our stories? So it's a really exciting watch, very camp, very over the top, but also super, super fun and exciting. It only lasts about an hour and a half with no intermission, so it's a really quick watch, very high energy, and it's a fantastic show to go if you want to have a fun night out. It is full of humorous songs and humorous references to the way that people are living today. And this show really makes these queens relevant to today's society, and it makes them very human rather than these like historical figures. They're just women who are singing about their lives. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of compassion for what they have actually gone through. Six is a phenomenon that is available everywhere around the world. There's a production that is touring in the UK. There's a production that's touring around the world. There's production in New York. So it is a widely available show, which you can check out. And I think it's totally worth if you haven't seen it. But even if you have seen it, I think this is a musical that I personally can always return to, because as soon as they change the cast, the new queens add a lot of different energy and flair to it. So it's like a super, super fun night out. I went with some girlfriends and it was really great. And yeah, I had the best time. So I would highly recommend Six. The ticket for this show, I paid £50 and I was in the last row of stalls. And while the view wasn't too restricted, we actually got those little bumpers that you can put on the seats. So you're a little bit like higher, because I think that if we didn't have that, we would miss quite a lot. But the other seats in the theater were pretty expensive. So Vaudeville Theater isn't really that big, and it was actually sold out that night. So I think this is a show where it's worth spending probably £50-60 to get a better ticket rather than like going God knows where and then not being able to see it properly. So if you can afford it, do that. Otherwise, maybe try and play rush tickets or check if there's like a lottery or anything else to kind of get a slight slightly cheaper deal. Six is also getting its pro shot very soon, and that's going to be with the original queen. So this musical is just going to continue to rise in its popularity. So definitely a good shout to go and check it out whenever you feel like it. And the last show that I've seen in January is The Lonely Londoners at the Kiln Theatre in Kilburn. Firstly, I love this theatre. It's one of those smaller London theatres that consistently produces really high quality shows. So if you haven't been to Kiln Theatre before, check it out. I've seen Two Strangers Carrot Cake across London before it transferred to West End there, and it was a great production. And this is also an amazing production and a very great adaptation of the novel of the same name. The story follows the first West Indian immigrants who are moving to London in the 1950s and their lives. It kind of focuses on the life predominantly of these four men, and then also their wife, auntie, and there's one more character who is not there in London with them but is present in their mind. So it is full cast of 7 people who are impeccable and are really delivering these roles with a lot of compassion and a lot of heartfelt feelings, because it's not an easy story. It is a story about adjustment, finding your community, finding your feet somewhere else. And also I think there's a particular sentiment of these people moving to a new country to find a better life. However, they do feel lonely and desperate and not accepted and marginalized, and from all of these perspectives they're not really enjoying their lives, but at the same time they can't go back because that would almost count as a failure for them. And I think a lot of people who are immigrants could relate to that story to a degree, because I think a lot of the times when people move from their home country, they move so they can pursue these better lives. So while this story captures a particular group in a particular time who moved to the UK, at the same time I think it has that resonance with just anyone who at any point moves for search of a better life. It is a very impactful and powerful watch. It is definitely not an easy breezy one, but I think it also leans heavily into the support that men can provide for each other and how they can really lift each other up, and how that kind of masculinity and the way that men are expected to behave doesn't need to be that way. They can really find and lean into that softer side so that they can help each other. So I think overall it is an incredible watch, and it's such an incredible adaptation of the novel. This show ends on the 22nd of February, so you do have a few more days to go and check it out. I'm not really sure if it's going to get transferred or not. It is also one that is a bit cheaper to get tickets for. I managed to get my tickets on Today Takes for £25, and also I attended Q&A after the show, which was really great because all of the main creative team was there to actually talk about the show, so it was really interesting hearing from them. An amazing aspect of this show is actually movement and dance, and I kind of didn't expect that this show would lean so much into dance as it did, but some of the most emotional scenes that in a way you can't put into words how characters are feeling are done through dance, and this was so beautiful, especially the moment when these male characters are trying to lift each other up, and this was done through like a really powerful choreography that symbolizes that. So this was a really strong show, so I'm really curious to see if it gets transferred to the West End at any point soon. So that concludes the list of all of the shows that I have seen in January 2025. Let me know how many shows you have seen and which ones are your favorites. As you can see, there are quite a few shows that I have managed to get tickets last minute, so if you're interested in finding out a bit more about best ways to secure cheap deals, then check out this video where I'm talking about my tried and tested methods to do this.